how everyone is talking about Empire, that show, what was it, Lee Daniels, whatnot, and he got his issues, and Monique and all that, which is all side issues, but how, and I like, Sister Stephanie A. Kaashe, her statement about it. I didn't expect her to say that, actually. I thought, somebody thought she was going to say what some of the other people said about it, but she looked at it from a different perspective, from a new perspective, where Empire, right? We don't, we say, oh, it's making black people look bad or such and such, or, it has a lot of sub themes, the whole homosexuality, so forth and so on, of one of the sons, boom, boom, boom. And people say fire, fire, bun, 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 bun. But remember, the light shine in darkness, but the darkness doesn't perceive the light. And what was interesting is in the last episode, at least the last two, the end of the season, right? This guy whose name is, what's his, Lucius, right? Lucius, Lucifer, right? Luca is Lucy, Lukey, Luke. We say Luke, right? But it also said be loose. Loose is light, coming from lux, 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 the lux, right? Which refers to light, right? So luscious, so I call him luscious. He's Luscious Lion. So, what's that guy's name? Terrence Howard. But he plays a interesting role. I must say that on some level, I enjoyed, at least the episode. I think I saw about the whole season, at least on the Roku, on the Fox Now. We got to see more or less the whole thing. But in the last, this guy, he has like these 3 sons and everything, right? And, there's all this drama, so forth and so on, with his wife, his baby mama and everything. And this guy, he's trying to build an empire, right? Or he has built an empire. So he's like a king. Now, the name that he used, or the name of the character, is Lucius, right? Lucius, Lion. Now, in the last episode, it was interesting because he gives his son, one of his son, Big Boy, the one who can't sing or doesn't sing, who's more or less, who been there for him is, huh? Yeah. And you know what? I'm being reminded of that. Yeah, but I wasn't going there. He gave it, okay, the homosexual son, he was the one he made the ruler, so forth and so on, because he probably think we're in this new time. But even that is an interesting, if you really want to get to the root of all this Batimanism among black people, so you have to study Francis Cress Welsing theory that found in the ISIS paper, right? Because this is not something that is, indigenous to us as a people, although there are so-called exceptions to the rule, but the exception to the rule shows there is a rule. If, if everything was an exception, then there'll be no rule. Right? And that's where the enemy want to bring things to. He's saying everything's exceptional this, exceptional that. But anyway, he gave the son who couldn't sing, he gave him a cross. He gave each of them gifts, right? Because, I don't want to give it away for ones who haven't seen it, but he gives his son, one of his sons, a cross. And he says, that's the Lion of Judah. He don't say Lion of the tribe of Judah, which is a key thing. He don't say Lion of the tribe of Judah, but he says, this is the Lion of Judah. I thought that was kind of very, very interesting right there. If some of y'all check it out, check it out for yourself. Also, if you can check out, Stephanie A. Kaashe's take on Empire. In fact, I really want to just bring that up so I can show you all, like, at one time what we're talking about right here. Let me see if I can type in, Stephanie A. I don't know if Kaashe, let me go YouTube's right here, and on Empire. It might be it is a recent vid, but it should, okay. I think here we go right here. Here's her vid. Empire TV, Strikes Back, uploaded by Stephanie A. Kaashe, right here. And her take on it is really, really very interesting, right? Yeah. And in the last episode where they basically speak about, here we go right here. This is it right here. Right. Yeah. So this is her vid right here. Stephanie A. Kaashe. Right. And I thought her take on it was interesting. And from watching the show myself, some people say this is bringing down black people or whatever. I don't go there with that. That's that kind of, everything is not a weeping willow sort of a point. Some things we've done to ourselves. And if we're going to explicate ourselves from it, we have to take responsibility. But, the kind of a segue from this empire of this Luscious, Luscious, I call him Luscious Lion. Anyway, okay, here's the boy. This is the boy right here that he gives the cross to. And it's a sort of a Coptic-ish kind of a cross and everything. And he says, that's the Lion of Judah. Then I began to start to think, I said, wait, empire, lion, and then the homosexual son, the singer, the big one who's blowing up, who was given the scepter of this music company industry, blase. He has a so-called lover, and this is what's weird. And this boy looked like a East African or Ethiopian, and he's also a Batiman, and then they use the word Batiman too, and this other guy who's a DJ tried to blow him up, and anyway, I don't want to give all that away, but the link with Lion of Judah I thought was interesting here, and I want to ask, where do you think they're going with that? Or what is there any sort of relationship? Well, obviously it is, because we all are over here at the end of the world. The end of the world was considered the Western lands, right? And all of the tribes, all the families are gathering in this place. And the Almighty said from the very beginning that he will show us the end from the beginning. Even look at this right here. She's wearing this leopard print, right? I mean, need we go into Egypt, and really break down the symbology of this? Or should we go with Mariposa, right? Should we go with the monarch butterfly? Some say, this is monarch butterfly program. Well, it could be. But what was before that became the so-called reality? You see, so there's many different levels of it. If you go immediate, you can see the monarch butterfly programming, so forth and so on. You can compare that she does right here in this to some of the other dramas about so-called white people. But one of her most interesting observations is that we don't look at so-called black people, right, in terms of so-called empire. Right. And what is an empire? Empire is a collection of many kingdoms, usually under a king who's over other kings. An empire is different than just a kingdom. An empire, like a king of kings, like, for example, the king of kings, right, is different than regular kings. We look at Ethiopia and we think we're just talking about a country. He's just a king over a country, called himself an empire. No, Ethiopia, right, both then and even spiritually now, rules over other kingdoms. This is why the king of kings, right, is a king of other kingdoms or rules over other kings. So we're looking at Ethiopia too is an empire, but we just view Ethiopia as one small country, as the New World Order does, as Papa Bush said that the New World Order is more than one small country. And when did he do that? He did that on September 11th. And what is the significance of September 11th? Well, September 11th is the empire of the King of Kings, the empire of Ethiopia's New Year's Day. Right? And people say, well, what does that have to do with it? See, you don't understand empire, real empire. So we have in the West, New York is the empire state. You see, there's a difference between a state, like the state of Israel. It's the state of Israel, right? It's not the kingdom of Israel, because those who are ruling it are the Jews who call themselves Jews, right? But then what did the second president of modern Egypt say? He said that the reason why the Ashkenazi Jews will never be accepted is because when the real Jews left, they left here black, and now you're come back and you're white. And it's beyond just racial complexion, right? The complexion for the protection, so to speak, right? We judge the tree by the fruit thereof. And so for the past 60 something years, all we've had is war and bloodshed, right? Until we get from Revelation 2:9 to Revelation 3:9. So what's on your mind concerning empire, right? Empire. And this is some of my views on this, so-called TV show right here, Empire, and, Sister Stephanie A. Ka'ashe's. See this one right here? This one right here. Let's see if we can pause this before it transitions. That one right there is interesting too. This was supposed to be this king right here. They'll tell you this is the Moorish king. But the Moors have co-opted Ethiopia and Ethiopianism as Moorish. The Moors were a kingdom, right, in the Ethiopian Empire. A rebelling kingdom, a kingdom that rebelled against the King of Kings. This just has to be told. The truth has to, you shall know the truth and truth shall set you free. They talk about the Prester John. They were looking for this Ethiopian king named Prester John. So her vid here connecting, empire and empire themes. We don't look at ourselves as empire. That's why I did the video saying that, well, now that we know Kemet, ancient Egypt, from the Hebrew perspective, Mitzrayim. Now that we know that Mitzrayim and the ancient Egyptians and the Bible Hebrews, now that we know that they are black, they are black, period. Now what? So we really need to get to that point even beyond so-called race. This doesn't mean that we dismiss race. But we have to get beyond race and move forward in the grace of I and I, Black Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Because to whom more is given, more is required. And another point I want to leave you with, since it began with us, right? Why don't we take responsibility for this situation? It's so obvious that the Almighty God, right, has blamed us for the way things are, but we continue to blame, right, others, right? For some things they're blamable, but if we were the first, we have to take some responsibility in being the last. The first shall be the last and the last shall be first. And this is no doubt one reason why it is so true that it's much easier to show compassion to animals. They are never wicked, at least intentionally. Anyway, some of my thoughts on empire as it connects with this Torah portion right here, Torah portion number 25, the RSS. Stay tuned. This is Wyndham Yadin, brother RasTafari reporting for the Lion of the Tribe of Judah Society of His Imperial Majesty, Garmawi Kadamawi Haile Selassie, the real King of Kings. Like it or lump it.